As Dan comes up, I'd like to kind of give you a hint of who he is if you don't know him already pretty well. Dan Kalick is and his wife, Devorah, run and playing an outfit called Bless Israel Network. It's founded and it is housed in Israel. What they are doing is providing a media outlet for Messianic believers in the land and a connection for us as well. What we can do is we can connect with Messianic believers in Israel to give them every type of encouragement, monetary, prayer, every other type of encouragement. Even just saying hello is an encouragement to those people. The part of the point of this is to inform viewers of what is actually happening in Israel. And Dan's going to tell us a little bit more about that in a few minutes. But it allows us to build the kingdom in a more connected way. It allows us to connect with them and them with us. They are, how shall I say, an underappreciated, underserved group in the land of Israel, at least for now. We hope that their tribe shall soon increase. So, Dan, if you would come up, we will pray for you, and you can get us going. Dan, being Jewish, never goes in a straight line to anywhere. That pattern was established at the Exodus. Sorry, I had to, brother.
It fits so perfectly. It's going straight to heaven.
That's right. He will go straight to heaven. Dear Lord, I want to thank you for my brother Dan and his precious work he's doing there. Help us to find ways to connect into it and to strengthen those precious people who share our beliefs in the land. Lord, we pray for your Yeshua daily. Let it be quickly and soon in our days. Amen. In your name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, you
Amen.
give it.
Thank you, brother.
And I'll do the offering after the end.
Okay. Well, it was just described to you that being typically Jewish, it never goes in a straight line. Well, of course, you all heard the real reason why Moshe got lost in the desert for 40 years. He didn't bother to ask his wife for directions, okay? And of course, there's another way to determine if someone's Jewish. They always answer a question with another question. So like you say, hey, you. Who, me? Well, I'd like to say, first of all, Shabbat Shalom, and welcome to anyone and everyone who's watching online. And I would also like to say a very special hello to Betty. The last time I was here, the incredible man who graced this pulpit for many, many, many years was still here with us. Saw him at the Messianic Leadership Roundtable several months ago. And at that point, it was very obvious that the Lord was knocking on his door. And since then, he has graduated. He is healed. He is whole. And he's looking at all of us and saying, come on, come on, have some matzah with me at my heavenly Seder table. And so I just would like to say, I love you, Bill and Betty. Thank you for being here today. Thank you. Well, for those of you who have seen or heard about our ministry, today will be in part a little bit of a review. There'll be some new material. And so I'm going to show you a little bit, some video and what have you. And then it's going to be kind of a multi-part message. In addition to kind of updating you a little bit on our ministry, I'm also going to talk about this incredible Messianic congregation that we have been blessed to get connected with down in, of all places, Bogota, Colombia. And it's quite unique, and I'm going to share a little bit about what they're doing, which has done some remarkable things between Jew and Gentile. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the Mishigas, which is going, for those of you who don't know what Mishigas is, just to say craziness, okay? Insanity. In Israel, as you know, we're about to have, or soon to have, elections yet again. And there's a lot of you that may not know exactly what's going on, why it's happening. So I'm going to explain a little bit about what's happening in Israel. But for now, I'd like to lead off by giving you a little bit of an update about our ministry. As Jay mentioned, we are a Messianic ministry with a heart to give the Messianic body in Israel a dedicated platform so you here, or anyone around the world, and wherever you might be watching, can actually hear and see your believing brethren speak directly into the camera and share with you what they're doing in Eretz Israel on a day-to-day basis to help build the kingdom. Okay, so you know what build the kingdom means. Some of you don't know what build the kingdom means. Dan, are you going to tell them what build the kingdom means? Okay, I'll tell them. Bringing Jews to faith in Yeshua, because we want Yeshua to return. We know he's coming back. There's no question about it. And for our poor, unbelieving Jewish brethren, they think it'll be the first time. Okay, so they don't know everything, but they got most of it right, okay? Most of it right. They just need that little nudge, okay? Mashiach, Mashiach. So the Messianic body in Israel, as was mentioned, is feeling kind of isolated and left out, okay? Not left behind. We don't want to go there, with all due respect to Tim LaHaye, okay? There's a lot of wonderful people in the Christian community that come to Israel, and their churches bless Israel, and so on and so forth. And all that's wonderful, and we don't want them to stop. We want them to continue. However, 99% of those wonderful Christians, when they come to Israel, guess where they go? They go right to the Orthodox Jewish community. And the government in Israel's fine with that, because the government in Israel doesn't really understand or appreciate Messianic Judaism. So they're okay if Christians come and go to their typical normative Jewish brothers and bless them, pray for them, and support them, and what have you. But what most of these well-intentioned Christians don't seem to realize is that there's another group of believers in Israel, i.e. Jewish believers like myself, and others who consider themselves Messianic who are not Jewish by birth, but they are grafted in because they understand what Romans 11 says, and they have what's known as a circumcised heart, as opposed to another portion of their anatomy, which I endured when I was 8 days old. I don't necessarily encourage everyone to do that, but you're certainly welcome. I mean, look how old Abraham was when he finally got the calling, okay? But the point is that the overwhelming number of Christians think they are blessing Israel, and they are, but they're actually not blessing the believers in Israel who share the same God, the same Messiah, and the same Scripture, Genesis all the way through Revelation. And so the Messianic body is in Israel, and they're wondering, how come we're not getting this blessing that all these wonderful Christians are pouring out on all our Jewish brethren who, frankly, for the most part, don't even like us? And if you don't know much about the landscape in Israel, it is a fact that Messianic Jews can, have, and continue to be persecuted. Most recently was within the last 2 weeks. There's a Messianic congregation in Jerusalem called King of Kings, which was founded many years ago by Wayne Hillsden. The ultra Orthodox Jews came and disrupted their service their Shabbat service. In fact, they made such a ruckus, the police had to be called. Not only were the police called, more had to be called because the demonstrators were so bad that they actually outnumbered the police. So they had to call in more police to calm the situation down. This is a sad representation of almost 2,000 years of misunderstanding about who Yeshua is, what true, authentic Messianic faith is, and frankly, what true Christian faith is. Because I will say this without fear or trepidation whatsoever, no true Christian should hate Israel or the Jewish people. Unfortunately, due to 2,000 years of what President Trump likes to call fake news, there's been a lot of misinformation. One, very clear in my mind, and I hope it is in yours, I was born and raised and still am a Jew. My DNA is Jewish. Generations, both sides of my family. When I accepted Yeshua, did I stop being a Jew? Why would I? He's a Jew. Born, raised, lived, taught, died, rose, and will return as a Jew. Okay? Unless something's happened that all of us don't know about. So when I accepted him as my Jewish Messiah, I didn't walk out of one door, close that, and walk into another door and said, "You're now a Christian." But this is what the typical Jewish attitude is towards Messianics. We are considered traitors. We are considered the lowest of the lowest. Many of the Orthodox don't have a problem with Christians, as long as they don't witness to them, as long as they don't try to convince them that Jesus is Lord. The term Jesus actually can be offensive to Jewish people. In fact, the Hebrew name for our Messiah, Yeshua, isn't even used by them. They say Yeshu, which is Yeshua without the A. And what does Yeshu mean? May his name be blotted out forever. Well, I think most of us, at least I hope most, if not all of us, know that Yeshua came to the family of the lost sheep of Israel, to the household of the lost sheep of Israel. And he taught. And the reason that the Jewish people accepted him and why there was such a ruckus is because he was affirming what they had been taught for generations. And some of you may not know this, it was not just Torah. He affirmed the oral law as well, which includes the Talmud, the Mishnah, the Gemara, and so on. And he affirmed the rabbis as well. They sit in the seat of Moses. So he did not come to do away with anything contrary to what some people believe Matthew 5:17 through 20 actually means. In fact, it means that he came to affirm, uphold, be the living example of. And for anyone who thinks grace cancels law, I have news for you. I love you, but you're wrong. Not only that, but Torah isn't the actual translation for law. When the so-called New Testament apostolic writing, many different names it's referred to, was translated from the Greek, they didn't have a word which exactly matched Torah. So they came up with the best bad word they could come up with, which is nomos, which means law. And basically to this day, you have pastors and Christians all around the world interpreting Matthew 5:17 through 20 as this Jewish rabbi who started a new religion called Christianity, did away with the Torah, did away with the law. Well, I think I'm safe in saying that most of us in this room realize that that's fake news. Yeshua didn't do away with the Torah. He didn't do away with the Shabbat. He didn't do away with the kashrut laws. He didn't do away with any of that. He came to affirm all of it. And this is true, authentic Messianic faith. And believe it or not, one of the saddest things about our experience for the last 8 years since we moved to Israel is that the one place that there appears to be a distinct lack of authentic Messianic faith is in Israel, of all places. Did you know that over 90% of the Messianic congregations in Israel do not have a Torah? Yeah, I see some of you shaking your head like, incredible. That's exactly what we think. Incredible. 90+% of them do not have a Torah. They don't think they need it. Israel needs a true, authentic revival, my friends. They need true, authentic Messianic faith. Because most of the first generation of founding fathers of Messianic congregations in Israel came from North America, had their formative belief years in Christian churches, got very comfortable with Christian liturgy, Christian worship, Christian theology. Then at some point, each of them got a call. They came to Israel. Well, since they were not being exposed to Torah, and were hearing message after message after message that grace cancels law, they come to Israel and they start congregations and they don't have a Torah. We happen to attend a congregation that does, one of the handfuls, founded by a wonderful gentleman named Eitan Shishkov, who I know many of you know well. His son, Avishalom, is actually running the congregation on a day-to-day basis. Eitan remains a force in the Messianic movement, and we love him dearly. One of the sweetest men you will ever come across in your entire life. My point is that the Messianic body in Israel is not being given an opportunity to be heard outside of Israel. And I would think that most of you who are Messianic, whether you're Jew or Gentile, and it is absolutely part of the Messianic movement that Gentiles are co-shareholders in the family and commonwealth of Israel, okay? But these poor Messianic brethren that you have in Israel, in the Holy Land, which is where Yeshua is going to reappear, by the way, contrary to what some may presuppose, like Salt Lake City, or what have you. I think he might look down and see the big temple there and what have you, and see the vault of names they've got in the cave and go, I'm going to Israel. The Messianic body is isolated from the rest of the world's believers. And when my wife and I discovered this, we started to pray. Someone needs to be raised up to give them a voice so people around the world can know, hear, be informed, connect with your Messianic brethren in the land. And we kept praying and praying and praying, and finally it appeared as though we got a message. You do it. You do it. Okay, we heard it not once, not twice, but several times, and so we started Bless Israel Network. And our flagship program is called Revelation to the Nations, where we are interviewing the leaders of Messianic ministries. But I want to make something clear. We're interviewing ministries that are doing humanitarian work. Yes, they have other aspects. Some do teaching and so on and so forth. But if they're not doing humanitarian work, we're not interviewing them. And the reason that we are interviewing those that are doing humanitarian work is because every single one of them is sharing the good news when they do their humanitarian work. It's very easy to stand up on the platform of a synagogue or a church or what have you and talk about Scripture. People do it all over the world. Catholic churches, Protestant churches, congregations, Jewish synagogues, all over the place. That's wonderful. But we believe that the kingdom can be more effectively built when Messianics are being armed with ammunition, i.e. your hard-earned dollars, among other things, and they have a chance to talk to their fellow Jewish brethren. And we actually believe, and with all due respect to Gentile believers, we actually believe there's a better chance for a Jewish person to hear about Yeshua from another Jew. And the reason I say that is because there's a lot of common experience that they have in their upbringing, in their family life, in their traditions. They may have gone to temple, they may have been bar mitzvahed, they may have honored Shabbat, all these kinds of things, but they just didn't get Yeshua. It's not to say that Gentiles can't effectively witness. They can, they do, and continue to. I'm only saying that the odds are generally with Jews who are believers in Israel talking to other Jews in Israel. So we started Bless Israel Network with the program Revelation to the Nations, and all the ministries that we're interviewing are doing lots of different types of wonderful humanitarian outreach work. And so if you have the video queued up, Robert, I'm going to show you a little video which gives you a little bit of information, shows both myself and my lovely wife a little overview of the ministry. Can we bring that up, Robert?
Jerusalem. My name is Daniel, and this is my lovely wife, Deborah.
How would you feel if you could get to know your Messianic brethren here in Israel? What would it be like to see them as they tell exciting personal stories about real miracles happening to them today? Imagine hearing their voices telling about Jews who have at long last found their Messiah.
Life in Israel today is quite challenging. Did you know that some of the believers are being persecuted? Plus, think for a minute about Israel's overwhelming security needs. We are a tiny country surrounded by over 400 million Arabs. Protecting our people causes a huge drain on the resources of the government to meet some of their most basic needs. Why is that important? Because Messianics play a critically important role in filling that gap.
What if you could establish your own personal connection with these vitally important ministries? Now you can. Bless Israel's network groundbreaking internet TV show, Revelation to the Nations, is the very first program dedicated to providing them a voice out to the nations, to you. When you listen to them, you will be inspired to become actively involved in the wonderful work they're doing all over Israel.
As we interview these ministries, you will see for yourself how they meet the needs of the poor, widows, orphans, Holocaust survivors, and much more. However, they have limited resources. Imagine what they could do if they had your help. They could reach more people, feeding their bodies and feeding their souls.
We know your heart will be touched by their efforts, and you'll be inspired to help them. We make this possible by providing their contact information, enabling you to make your own personal connection with them. That's the goal of this program, to be a bridge that connects you to your Israeli family.
What does this ultimately mean? Bottom line, you will play a direct role in leading Jews into the kingdom. And the best part is, you don't have to leave home. You can find us at blessisraelnetwork.com. Watch the programs, be inspired, and get yourself involved. It's never been easier. Together, we will finish the work Yeshua began. Together we will reunite him with his precious brothers. Together we will raise up Zion before the nations. Will you join us?
So that's a little overview that we send out. If someone's invited us to come to their congregation, we send that ahead of time so they get an idea of what we're doing. Did anyone notice the final visual image when blessedisraelnetwork.com was on the screen? Did anyone see or notice what that was? It was the cemetery on the Mount of Olives. We all know what the significance is of that cemetery, right? Okay. So do the Jews. That's why they're buried there. Because in spite of the fact that they don't yet know Yeshua, Judaism is by its very nature a Messianic faith. Okay? It's focused on Mashiach. But like an Orthodox rabbi in Israel, his name is Shlomo Riskin, said during a YouTube video several years ago, he's become very fascinated with the Christian Jesus thing. And he said in a video, if I was sitting next to him right now, I would want to ask him one question. Is this your first or second time coming? This is an Orthodox rabbi. He got in a lot of trouble from the Orthodox community, but we know for a fact that the Jewish body in Israel, even amongst the Orthodox, there are a lot of quiet closet believers in Israel now. A lot. Officially, they say the number of Messianics is 30, 35, maybe 40,000. We think it may be as many as 100,000 because there are so many that are still living in fear. Rabbi Yitzhak Kaduri, who died about 12 years ago, was one of the most respected Orthodox rabbis in all of Israel. When he died, estimates vary, but there was anywhere from 2 to 3, maybe 400,000 people that attended his funeral. The streets were blocked everywhere. And he wrote a note, and his instructions were not to open it for at least 1 year after he passed. And when the note was opened, it was sort of a cryptic note, but the bottom line is, he said Yeshua is Mashiach. Been a lot of controversy about that. So the Jewish people are waking up. And we want to give you guys an opportunity to actually establish personal connections with your Messianic brethren in Israel in a very tangible way. So now, if we can, I'm going to show you a short clip from one of our programs where we're interviewing a lovely lady named Mariana who has a ministry in the desert called Streams in the Desert, and her calling is very biblical. Her calling is to the widow and orphan. So if we could pop that one on, Robert.
Before we went to break, you started to tell us some of about your ministry. Okay, give us a little more detail about some of the specific projects, some of the specific things that you're doing in the ministry, so our viewers can get a little bit more of a sense of that.
I think the big picture for everything we do is the idea that when the scripture tells us that we need to make the widow and the orphan and the stranger in the land our priority, It doesn't say your government needs to make them a priority. It says you need to.
Amen.
You, the people. And I believe that every time we step out in that place, taking care of this particular people in our communities, we're standing in the gap on behalf of Israel. We're saying to the Lord, we're doing that. We're doing what you commanded us to do. We are trying to fulfill what's on your heart. And we are also standing in the gap before God and the very severe consequences that not taking care of the widow and the orphan have in the scripture. So that is a big picture for us. That's what we're trying to do. We as Messianic believers, as the lovers of Yeshua, we're stepping in as his bride in where he would like us to be. Mm-hmm. On a practical level, we have particular projects that are designed for women, projects that are designed for youth, and projects that are designed for children. And in the last maybe 4 or 5 years, we also started working more and more with the nations. Because the Lord is speaking more and more to us about the one new man and working the field together as one new man with the believers from the nation that join Israel through adoption and through engrafting.
There we go. So you see some of the supporters that we have there, including Jonathan Bernis, Rabbi Yitzhak Shapira, who I'm going to talk about in a moment, Boaz Michael, and founder of First Fruits of Zion, and Dr. David Reagan, who's down the road in McKinney, Texas. But this wonderful lady and her ministry, Streams in the Desert, as you said, not your government, you. And when she talks about the one new man bringing people from the nations, believers from the nations, that's exactly what our ministry is trying to accomplish. An interactive bridge so you can make your own connections. And when you watch the full interview of Mariana or any of the others that we've already done on our website, our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, therein you will get their contact information. So you then have the opportunity to make your own personal contact, your own personal connection, communicate with them, pray with them, bless them, and if you choose to support them or donate to them, every single nickel that you provide will help them continue to build the kingdom in Israel. And as my wife said in the video, the best part is you don't have to leave home. You can do it right from here, right from your computer. You can play a tangible role in building the kingdom. And most of the ministries that we interview encourage volunteers. So some people that aren't really familiar with Israel and would like to be sort of more hands-on, rather than just getting on a bus at 7 o'clock in the morning and schlepping around for 10 hours and then back to the hotel and, and up again at 7 o'clock, which is wonderful. But some of these ministries actually encourage volunteers. So if you want to spend an extra week in Israel, you can contact them. We connected one gal from Costa Rica. Now, we don't necessarily do this as part of our ministry, but to the extent that we can, if necessary, we will give you the information if you don't have it. But usually their contact information is all you need. You contact them directly, and you can actually volunteer when you're there. Give some real meaning. This one gal in Costa Rica spent a month at one of the ministries whose leader we interviewed, and she loved it. So that's pretty much the overview and update on what our ministry is doing. But I touched a moment ago about this Messianic congregation in Bogota, Colombia, and Rabbi Yitzhak Shapira. Rabbi Yitzhak Shapira, for those of you who don't know him, is an Israeli. His family comes from Iraq. He happens to live in the U.S. now, but comes from a very, very, very Jewish religious background. His family was one of the founding members of a congregation in Israel, and he discovered Yeshua. And he announced that he discovered Yeshua in service. He said, I have something to share with you. I know who Mashiach is. And the entire congregation went and looked at him. And he said, Yeshua is Mashiach. Somebody walked over to him very politely, whispered in his ear, get all your stuff and get out. And they threw him out. Did that deter him? No. He ended up writing a book with a very controversial title. Some of you may have heard of it. Some of you may not have. The title is Return of the Kosher Pig. Yes, I said kosher pig. Bacon kosher? No. Is ham kosher? No. See, in Judaism, the sages have written that the most unkosher will become kosher when Mashiach comes. And so when Yeshua returns, since he's been called Yeshu, and he is currently considered the most unkosher, he will become the kosher pig. He will become kosher. Hence the title, Return of the Kosher Pig. Some people have difficulty with the title itself. I'm not going to read a book with a title like that. Well, read it. Because what Rabbi Shapira has done is he has thoroughly studied the writings of the sages, in addition to the Torah, the Talmud, the Gemara, the Mishnah, all of the ancient writings. And he has extracted from ancient Jewish writings by the sages proof that Yeshua is Messiah and Yeshua is divine. There is no other book like this, and consequently his ministry has exploded. He actually has an online Messianic yeshiva called Yeshivat Shuvu. And we've known him now for about 5 or 6 years. We've become close friends. And he introduced us to this incredible Messianic congregation down in Bogota, Colombia, where we have been 3 times. We were just there 2 weeks ago. And what's different about this congregation? Well, I'll tell you. Unlike virtually every other Messianic congregation in the world, the U.S., Israel, what have you, this congregation has a wonderful, loving, ongoing relationship with the leadership of the Orthodox Jewish community in Bogota. And it's not just, hi, shake your hand, see you at a Giants game or something like that, or a Rockies game, excuse me, I forgot where I am. I just came from San Francisco, sorry. But this is an incredible, unique relationship. And guess what they're not doing? They're not witnessing to this rabbi. They started this relationship based on a friendship from an event which took place. Now, I'm sure you have pro-Israel events here in the Denver area, or wherever you might be watching online in your town. They have pro-Israel events. In most cases, either a pro-Palestinian group or Palestinians themselves will likely come and try to disrupt it. It happens all the time. Well, sure enough, they had a pro-Israel event in Bogota, Colombia. The rabbi was the key speaker, and in the middle of his speaking, some Palestinian guy stood up and started raising a ruckus. Well, guess what? The brother of the pastor who founded this Messianic congregation, his brother and the pastor's wife were in attendance. And when they heard this Palestinian stand up and make a ruckus, the brother of the pastor stood up and shouted him down. not with anger, but with truth. Because the best way that you can overcome a lie is with truth. And that's exactly what he did. He quoted from Scripture. He affirmed the rights and place of the Jewish people and Israel, and the right of Israel to exist in the land that Hashem, God, Adonai, gave them. And the rabbi stood up there. He didn't know who this guy was. And he stood there just shocked. So after the event was over with, the rabbi came, shook his hand, and said, "Who are you? This just doesn't happen." And so they explained who they were, that they belonged to this Messianic congregation, and therein began a relationship which has evolved and evolved and evolved. So much so that the rabbi, every time we go to Bogota, we end up meeting with this rabbi in one way or another because they love each other. In fact, while we were in Bogota a couple of weeks ago, the rabbi was in Israel. Do you know he got on a plane and flew all night to speak at the conference that we were at, which was being hosted by this Messianic congregation? He stood up on the platform like I'm standing up here now. I'm awake. He was practically asleep because he was completely jet-lagged. But he loves this Messianic congregation that much, he flew all night to stand up and speak in front of the group. The room had about 1,000 people in it. People from all around the world, Malaysia, U.S., Europe. Several of them were traditional Jews, not just Messianics. This congregation is doing something that I have not seen. Very similar in some ways to the worship you have here. They have a Torah. They do a full Torah service, all the aliyahs. They honor Shabbat, they eat kosher. In fact, if you put a blindfold on this rabbi and took him by the hand, and he didn't know where he was going, and you brought him into this kehillah in the middle of worship, he might think he was in a Jewish synagogue. That's what they are doing. This is the context, we believe, is the most effective way to get the Jewish people to at least be willing to talk to you. Not by witnessing right out of the box. What's the matter with you? Don't you understand Isaiah 53? If you don't understand Isaiah 53, you're going to hell. Oh, there's some real motivational speech. Sign me up. I can't wait. You don't want a Jewish person to be in fear of going to hell and accept Yeshua in that kind of context. You want them to embrace Yeshua. So what the Jewish people need, in our view, is just exactly what this congregation is doing. And I say that any congregation I'm at, including this one, if there's a pro-Israel event that you know is going to happen here in the Denver area, get some people and go to it. And make sure that if the Palestinians try to disrupt it, you counter them. And you stand up and you support Israel, and you support the right and the place of the Jewish people. And you will get the attention of the Jewish rabbi who's speaking, or whoever the Jewish person is. They will take notice. And therein could be the beginning of what might become an extremely fruitful relationship like this one in Bogota, Colombia has. I encourage you, try. Maybe some of you are doing it already, but if not, I suggest this is a very, very fruitful way to begin an active, respectful relationship with the Jewish community. Not only did the Orthodox rabbi come, the head chazan of all of Colombia came. The Israeli ambassador to Colombia came and spoke. And the vice president of the nation of Colombia also came. It's a remarkable, remarkable congregation, and we have been very blessed to get connected with them. We've been down there 3 times. We actually spent a week, just my wife and I, at the house of the pastor and his wife, and they treated us like better than a 5-star hotel. It's just incredible, the treatment, the hospitality we got. But again, the importance of respecting what is important to the Jewish people is the key. If you start out by trying to witness to them, I think you may end up going down an unfruitful road. But the Jewish people have lost a lot of their identity because so much of what they treasure has been discounted, dismissed, disavowed, misunderstood, misinterpreted. The Jewish people have it all except Messiah. They need to know Torah hasn't been thrown away. Think about this when you go about your daily lives here. And if you hear about a pro-Israel event, again, I encourage you to attend and stand up for Israel. Don't let the enemy steal what belongs to Israel. Don't let the enemy steal what belongs to the Jewish people. We know God did not give that land to the Palestinians. There is no such thing as a Palestinian people. It is an invention by Yasser Arafat. Any of you ever see the movie Exodus? Long time ago, 1960, by Otto Preminger. It wasn't one of the most popular movies of all time, but it's a docudrama about an Israeli family, Jewish family, fictitious, Lee J. Cobb, Eva Marie Saint, Paul Newman, Sal Mineo, set against real events around the rebirth of the modern nation of Israel. And in that movie, Peter Lawford, who plays a British soldier, uses the term Palestinians. This movie was made in 1960, well before the Six-Day War. Who do you think he's referring to when he says Palestinians? Jews. Suddenly, as Walid Shabbat, a former friend of ours, because he's kind of changed his ways, but a former Muslim terrorist who became a believer and a strong supporter of Israel for many, 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 many years, up until about a year or two ago. He was living in Jericho at the time of the Six-Day War. He said, on June 4th, I went to bed as a Jordanian, because they all had Jordanian citizenship. The next day, without moving anywhere, I became a Palestinian. It's fake news, my friends. It's fake news. So I encourage you to try as best you can to forge relationship with the local Jewish community here and demonstrate to them your true love, not just and only about trying to convince them to grasp Yeshua. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but develop a relationship through your love and support for what the Jewish people treasure: the Shabbat, the Torah, Israel. So we're going to switch gears here and move towards the final portion of what I wanted to talk with you about today, and that is what's going on in Israel. Land of confusion. People have an argument in Israel, and what do? They don't throw food on the wall or go out and get drunk. They start a new political party. That's the modus operandi in Israel, okay? Currently in Israel, I think the number of political parties is 42. 42. Can you imagine trying to get something done with 42 political parties? It's what we call in Israel a balagan. What's a balagan? Oh, impossible situation. So last November, a member of the government named Avigdor Lieberman resigned because he did not like Netanyahu's so-called softness on Hamas. There had been a lot of rockets fired into Israel. And of course, several weeks ago, there was over 700 fired within 3 days. But Mr. Lieberman didn't like the fact that he felt Bibi was too soft. So he stepped down, he resigned. And because of that, the coalition that Netanyahu had collapsed. Because in Israel, all the governments are coalition governments. Unlike the United States, where you have basically two parties, Democrats and Republicans, or Democrats, as some like to call it, okay? Sorry about that. I used to be a Democrat, okay? Just change one letter from E to U and, it works fine. Anyway, the coalition fell apart. You have to have at least 61 seats in the 120-seat Knesset to form a majority coalition. There's never been any party in the history of modern Israel that's had 61 seats. So there's always coalitions. So what happens is when there's an election, the president of the country looks over the voting results and he decides which party he's going to give the nod to try to form a coalition. Well, in the last election, Bibi's Likud party nudged out this new rival party called Blue and White, which is headed up by Benny Gantz, the former IDF chief of staff, 36 seats to 35. So the president turned to Bibi and said, okay, form a coalition. Well, again, in order to do that, you need at least 61 seats. So this is when all the backroom negotiating starts. And they sit down and they try to hammer out, well, you give me this and I'll do that, and I'll do this, you get. So all the negotiating goes on. Bibi couldn't come up with 61 seats because Avigdor Lieberman, who had stepped down last November and caused the collapse of the government, refused to join the coalition unless he gets what he wants. So he became what we call the kingmaker. His party, Israel Beitenu, has 5 seats. Bibi needed that in order to get across the 60-seat threshold. Didn't happen. Avigdor Lieberman is very conservative, but very secular. He does not like the Haredim, the religious. And the religious Jews in Israel do not serve in the army. And Avigdor Lieberman wants them to serve in the army. So his position is they either serve in the army, you write a new law that forces them to serve in the army, or I won't join the coalition. Well, therein came loggerheads. So the government collapsed. And now, once again, it's collapsed for the second time within 6 months. And so in September, we're going to have new elections all over again. So I don't know what's going to happen, but we would ask for your prayers because the religious Jews seem intractable because serving in the army means they have to do work on Shabbat. And they're not willing to do that. Avigdor Lieberman says they either do that or I'm not joining the government. So we've got a standoff. So I hope and pray that we don't have yet a three-peat of what's already happened with the government yet collapsing again. But this is really what goes on in Israel right now. It's a little bit crazy, a little bit frustrating. Even though I know here in the U.S. things are pretty frustrating too, because most of the people that like Trump just cannot figure out why the Democrats have been standing there for 2.5 years going, no, 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 no. Whatever Trump wants, they say, no, they don't want to do it. So he's been able to get stuff done in spite of the fact that the Democrats have been a roadblock as best they can for almost everything. So imagine if there were 42 parties in the U.S. My goodness gracious, it's hard to believe. So anyway, we need your prayers that there will be some movement and that we will have elections and that we will be able to move forward with the new right kind of government. So Let me close by bringing up our website, and especially for those of you who are online, here in this wonderful congregation. Yes? Pictures? If you want to show a couple, that's fine. Let me show you 3 quick pictures. We'll go to the website. Okay? Put up whichever one you like, and I'll tell them who it is. Okay. That is the Orthodox rabbi of Columbia. His name is Rabbi Goldschmidt, a remarkable man, not a young man, flew all night, totally jet-lagged, and spoke to a group of 1,000 people. I have a lot of respect and love for that man, and he loves this Messianic community, many of which, by the way, are Anusim. Do you know who the Anusim are? Those are the Hispanics that lived in Spain and Portugal, and then when all the Jews were kicked out, given an option of either convert, die, or leave the country. And many of them went to Central and South America. About 50% of this congregation down there are Anusim, and the rabbi knows this, and he loves them. He loves them all. Okay, next. This is a gentleman named Eldad Kenan, who we've met and spent some time with in Israel. He is an historian that goes into burial caves. Ooh, wouldn't you like to do that on a Sunday afternoon? Honey, what do you want to do? Let's have a picnic and go to a burial cave. Okay. Well, what he has done is he has gone in and he has determined that there are Christians, Jews, and Messianic Jews buried in the same burial tombs in Israel, in the Golan and in the Galilee, up to and as late as the 6th century. This is unheard of. No one anywhere is doing the kind of work that he's doing. We've met him. We actually spent about 3 hours with him and Rabbi Shapira one time going through a bunch of caves, filming it. I was actually the camera person. It's on Rabbi Shapira's website. A remarkable experience, because you would never think that traditional Jews would allow what they might consider Christian Jews to be buried in the same tomb with them. They did. In those days, they all sang, prayed, lived together. Because being a Messianic Jew in those days was not that big of a deal. They were considered Jews, not like what's happened today. They were considered part of the Jewish community. And this man has done some remarkable work on that. Final picture. Ted Pierce and Joshua Aaron, 2 Messianic musicians who were at the conference. Ted lives in Texas. Joshua lives in Israel. Actually, he attends the same congregation that we attend. And we had a lot of fun with them while we were there. Okay, so let's bring up the website. And for those of you who are watching online, if you would like to support what we're doing, because we travel extensively and it costs a lot to travel, it costs a lot to put together these programs, and we are, we are 100% supported by donations. And so if you're touched by what we're doing and you would like to connect with us and you would like to make a one-time or reoccurring donation to our ministry, you can go to our website, click on the donate tab. And on that page, you can click on whatever option you like in terms of making a one-time donation with a credit card, PayPal, a mailing address to send a check, or a reoccurring donation, which they will do, will be done automatically if you provide the information. Then if you click on the Contact tab, here you can send us a note. You can tell us you're nuts, we don't want to have anything to do with you. You can tell us you're great, we want to get connected with you. Put us on your mailing list, come speak at our congregation, blah, 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 anything you like on there. And then on the other side of the page where it's got programs, so for those of you who want to see some of our full programs, click on the programs and then Revelation to the Nations. And there you'll see some screenshots from those that we've recorded. You just click on the screenshot and boom, you get to watch the entire program, and the contact information for that ministry is included in the program. We have other material as well. If you go back up and click on enrichment, underneath the program tab. No, go to programs. No, go back to the top to programs and click on the program tab, and then underneath it, you'll see rich enrichment. There you go. Okay. My wife and I happen to do several little vignette type programs on our own. I do a couple called My View as a Jew, catchy title, Eye on Israel. She goes deep into the Torah end of the pool with Taste of Torah and Heartbeat of the Torah. So if you want some real teaching, you can click on those as well. So I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity. Sorry I went maybe a little bit longer than you were anticipating, and if your golf tee time gets pushed back a little bit today, I apologize. But this is what we do, and we're grateful for the opportunity to come and share with you. And I'll be around during the ONEG, so if you have any questions, please feel free. We have some flyers that you can take with you as well. But thank you very much for letting me come and speak.